Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulihi. Amma ba'du. I greet our audience with the greeting, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to our Thursday evening Quranic presentation. We're presenting from the Qur'an to the Mali students. Some of you may not be Mali students, and we pray that you benefit from our presentation as well. However, it is directed towards the Mali students specifically, because it's dealing with the lessons that they are doing in the Mali classes. And I'll try to say something that will cover the lessons. So we're looking at the Qur'an, and we're going to look at some sources. We'll look at a verse, and then we'll look at sources related to the verse. From the sources, we gather information and ideas that we can take and put together in a reflection that we write, as well as in comments that we make on the verse. So the first step in this method is to read the Qur'an yourself. You just read it in Arabic. And it reads, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, wa Zakaria إذ نادى ربه ربي لا تذرني فردا لا تذرني فردا وأنت خير الوارثين. That's the Arabic. Now, for the students where you are at, look at the translation that's given, and you all are looking at the translation of Abu Faris, because Abu Faris will also have the grammar for you. I am recommending for the students, I have recommended that we use Abu Faris as our source, not go to other sources. Don't go around searching all through the internet for other sources. It's an easy source. It keeps all of us on the same page, and it's easy to use for your research and what you're doing. Abu Faris. So if you look at his translation, because you have one page, you don't have to do a lot of clicking. One page is going to have the translation, and it's going to have the grammar for each word. So the next step, we look at the translation, and this word and Zakaria. If is when he cried, nada. He cried. Now you don't want to switch it to something else. Just take the translation here. That way you have an idea of what the Qur'an is talking about, what the verse is talking about. Once you have an idea of what it's talking about, when you go to your sources, you can keep everything in context just by knowing the idea of what is being talked about. Rabbahu will be to his Lord. Rabbahu. Rabbi means, oh my Lord. You see the word Lord? It's my Lord. La tadharni. You see, la has a negation, there is not. Tadharni is you leave me. It's a verb, leave, you leave me. Leave me. The you is understood. Do not leave me. And then we have further than. Further than, he's saying, is without offspring. Further than means without offspring. That's what he's saying. Just the translation. Though, where is for though. Anta is thou. Khayru is best. Warithin is inheritance. So now we have an idea of what it's saying. That's the idea we start with. It's not the translation that you may end up keeping because you're going to end up writing your own translation. That's just the start to give us ideas about what is being said. Once we gather all the information here, our translation may appear different. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it. To have to think differently. In fact, to think differently is a good thing. Now, the next step is grammar. You go and you look at it and you read each word grammatically. Grammatically, you would read it. Like if I say, la tazarani, give a grammatical explanation. This would be the la of prohibition. When you're using the second person with the la, and then you put in the sukun, tazara. The sukun here, tazara, the sukun is la tazara. And then the ni would be me. La tazara, this is the la of prohibition. Do not leave. You do not leave me. And then we continue on. And then Rabbi, he says Rabbi. This kasra here is, if you say my Lord, you would say Rabbi with the ya. But the ya is dropped. It's shortened. It's dropped, and you just have Rabbi. Instead of Rabbi. That's why it ends in kasra, because the ya has been dropped. Then we could talk about the logic of what it's saying when the ya is dropped, which I will not get into right now. We're sitting there grammar. Yes. And when you have this expression in the Qur'an, the ya is also dropped. That's understood. That's why he said O. Actually, the O is dropped. You're saying, Ya Rabbi, O my Lord. Yes. Okay. So you go through and look at each word grammatically, then read it grammatically using the same words for translation. Even then, your translation is going to be different. Even by using the same words, they may fall in a different order. Your words will. Then the next step will be to go and look at the sources. Now, the first source we want to take a look at, and I want you to know we're gathering ideas. We're going to look at the source, Aragib. Aragib. Aragib is it's an Arabic dictionary. It's very well known, and it's well used by many of today's scholars. They use Aragib. It's a Quranic Arabic dictionary. It's a good dictionary. It's Arabic. So the students have grown to this level to use Arabic dictionaries, looking at Arabic sources, and the students are progressing well in doing it. So Ragib, we're going to look at two words now from the verse. We're going to look at the words fard. You have the word fard, and you have the word al-warithin. Now we're continuing from the last week's presentation. We're looking at Zechariah, and he's talking about the bones, his bones. His bones are weakening. And we just got some ideas from it. I didn't draw it all out, about the bones and what the bones represent, so forth and so on. I didn't draw it all. I always took some ideas from it. Bones. We're continuing now from that. And here we have Faradan and Warithin. So what I see right away, I see the name Farad in terms of Farad Muhammad, and I see the name Waris in terms of W.D. Waris D. Muhammad. Warithin. But it's in the plural. I'm just saying that's what my eyes see. If I give it the eye test, I'm saying Farad and I'm saying Waris. These two names. Now, I was saying to my wife, I can speak a half hour today, or I can speak 3 hours today. That much information is in my head to speak for the next 3 hours straight. But I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to say everything that I see. I'm just going to give some signs, some hints at things. As I mentioned last week, the students, if you have questions, then I could perhaps speak another hour of your question. If you don't have questions, then I would use this at another time and draw out the whole presentation. Maybe during the month of Ramadan, I can sit and relax and take 3 hours, take 4 hours. If I take the verse on bones with this verse, we're talking about maybe 4 hours, and with the same style of presenting, for about 4 hours. And maybe during the month of Ramadan, I may do that. We'll call it a Ramadan session. Okay. So these two names, fire and water. I'm going to come back to this, inshallah, and make reference to the idea of Farad Muhammad and Waris Deen Muhammad, based upon the information that's given. I'm not going to have preconceived thoughts and looking for something. I'm going to take these two names, this idea I see from me reading it myself. Then let's take the information and feed it back into the two names and take a look. No tricks, just take a look. So on Monica, the first name is we're going to look at is Farad. The root letters are Fa, Ra, and Da. So he gives Al-Faradu. So the internal noun, which is the same as the name up here, the word up here, Farad, he's given the internal noun is Al-Faradu. He says, Alladhi la yahtalitu bihi gayruhu. This first part for the students, up to the first comma, you should get a definition. You will get a definition about fun. It's going to tell you what fun. Fun is that which, other than it, something outside of it, other than it, does not mix with it. Nothing mixed with it. This idea. The idea we have is without offspring. But now already we're getting something that's not exactly without offspring, but we'll get the idea of something being alone, by itself. It's single, alone, it's by itself, nothing is mixed with it. This is Farad. We go back up. How does this, just reflecting, how does this fit in with Farad Muhammad? Just this idea here. Let us finish reading for the student's sake. He says, فَهُوَ أَعَمُّ مِنْ الْوَتْرِ. He said, it is more common, you could say, than al-watri. Al-watri is odd. You have something that's odd, meaning something that's odd, that's by itself. It's more than just odd. like one. One is odd. So, like we have the odd, we have witr. We talk about the witr prayer is the odd. The witr is the odd number. You add one to it till you even, and that's the odd. With the odd. And it's more specified than al-wahid, meaning one. So you would say, instead of saying odd, you would say fard. Instead of saying one, you would say fard. Fard would be used. It's more specific to say fard. So in this case, what does this have to do with what we know of the history of Prophet Muhammad, who came to America and introduced al-Islam to us? That in the history it says he came alone. And what he gave us was not mixed with something else. Even today, many people reject Prophet Muhammad because what he gave us was not traditional. He didn't give us something from the Pakistani people. He didn't give us something from the Arab people. What he was alone in what he gave. That's what we mean by being alone. This was fun. Now, he extracts from the Qur'an. I can't go into it because I'll take the 3 hours. I'm not going to go into it because I know it'll get good to me and I'll be here for 3 hours. That's just a hint. That's an idea there. Let's continue going. Waja'uhu, and its plural is furada. Furada. That's the plural of fard. So that's what we get from Aragib. This idea here. We take this idea and we put it in our notes. We go back up here. He's saying, do not leave me alone, unmixed. Where we were put in the temple or the mosque, and we were not to mix with anyone else outside of the African American. This is the concept of fard. Put in a situation and you're not mixed, and what you're given is not mixed with something else. It has hints in it, but you're not going to mix. We should understand this. We have to go back and really study our history. Read the Qur'an and study our history with it. Because now we're mixing. And you were not to mix. The information given from Prophet Muhammad, we were not to mix. Yes. Now we mix in with the world. We want the world to accept it. And the world rejects it. Okay, let's continue. That's an idea on Father. So do not leave me, Father. This is Quran now. Do not leave me, Father. So now we have where Urasa from the word al-warithin. Now, quickly, al-warithin is in the plural. That means there's not to be one warith. It shouldn't be one warith. Because if it's just one warith, we're back to fard, being fard. We're not to be fard. Another hint for you. See, when you are left alone, ostracized somewhat, then you can be free to say what you have to say because you're not part of the crowd. Some of us are part of the crowd, so we have to compromise our thoughts. I don't have to compromise in my thinking. I've been free to not have to compromise. But I'm not here to insult anyone or to offend anyone. No. El-Wirasahu, El-Wirasatu is one of the internal nouns to give us. El-Wirasatu and El-Irsu. These are two of the internal nouns. So we say, defining this is a Ragib. He's saying, Intikalu. So El-Irsu or El-Wirasatu is Intikalu Kinyatin Ilayka. It's the transference of, we could say, of property. Kenya is property or possessions, acquisitions. Kenya. Maybe that's the country Kenya. We have the country Kenya. Kenya must be property or acquisitions. Kenya. You know, you got riches in Africa. And Ghana is like Ghanaian. Ghana, Ghana, that's rich. Maybe these are the names of these countries. This is Kenya, and you have Ghana. And you have Mali. Mal is finance, money, Mal. So you have Mali. So yes, just looking at some of these names. So, Intikalu Kinyatin is the transference of acquisitions, possessions, money, property, possessions, Ilaka to you, an Gairika. That's not yours. It's other than yours. Gairika, other than yours. Men Gairi without Akdin, without a contract. So it's a transference of property to you that's other than yours. It's not yours, and you are receiving the transference without a contract. Now we have to ask ourselves, does that sound like the idea of the word we have called inheritance? We go back just to see we're on the right track. Do not mix. Does that look like without offspring? You're not mixing with anything. We say inheritance. Does that sound like inheritance? It's not yours, and it's from other than you, and there's no contract. Inheritance. ولا ما يجري مجرى العقد. And it is that which does not follow the logic of the contract. Because a contract is an agreement. Just look up the word contract. It's an agreement between two people or more, what happens. That's the contract. Inheritance is not an agreement between two. It's not in an agreement. It's not a signed agreement, an understood agreement. So it doesn't follow the logic of a contract. Inheritance does it. وَسُمِّيَ بِذَلِكَ الْمُنْتَقِلُ عَنْ الْمَيِّتُ عَنْ الْمَيِّتِ. And it is called by that the transference upon or about death. The transference about death. So that's inheritance. A transference of wealth upon death. We could say upon death, where it doesn't have the logic of a contract. Only you have to be the one who is eligible for the inheritance. Yes. And we're not talking about a will or a contract or anything of that nature. I'm not a lawyer, but even maybe sometimes inheritance and contracts, A will is a form of a contract. But let's say without the will, there's no will. It's without a contract. So there's no will, there's no contract signed, this idea of inheritance. Yeah, keep that in mind. We define inheritance. Keep this in mind when we go back to the verse. So these are the two words. So do not leave me further, and you are the best of wider things. Now, we go to Shalkani. Shalkani, he's going to comment on wider things. So we find this in parentheses. We find one of the words, wider thing. Well, anti-khayru al-wider thing. So that wasn't enough or anything on front of it that I need to show. So I just show you al-wider thing. That is to say, khayru min yabqa ba'da kulli man yamutu. That's to say, the best of he who remains. See, you are the best. You are the best of al-wider thing. So you are the best of he who remains after all of he or those who dies. The best. The best of that which remains, you could say, or who remains, or that which remains after all has vanished. Then we say Allah is the best of wider things. Yes. And we have this concept that after everything is gone, this whole world, this whole material world which we have talked about, has vanished, have perished, have died. Everything. What remains is Allah. Allah still remains, the best. So the best of the world in terms of its abstracts, which we have talked about, and we're talking philosophically now. The best of the thing is in its abstract form more so than it is in its apparent form. Yes. The best of man is more in its spiritual form than it is in its material form. The best of man is in his knowledge form more so than in his material, the way he looks, his outwardly material form, physical form. Yes. So if someone dies, if they die, the best of that which remains of that person is in the form of the knowledge of that person, not the body. The body is going to decay. So if the knowledge can last for 100 years, that person can live on for 100 years and outlive the body. Yes. We're still listening to Miles Davis. He's still alive in terms of his abstract form, in terms of his musical mind. He still lives. We still study him. A musician still studies him. A musician still copies him. And people still listen and say, yes, he got that from Miles. That's Miles. He's still alive. Yes. Beethoven, still alive. But his body has been dead for years. But he's still alive. Muhammad the Prophet, the President, peace be upon him. How do we see him? If we've seen him correctly, he's still alive. But if we're seeing him in his physical form, he's been dead for years. Yes. So, let's go back. وَأَنْتَ خَيْرُ الْوَارِثِينَ. The best of what is to be acquired after death. You are. Because after even after everything is gone, even in the abstract, Allah still remains. You are the best of al-warithin. Ideas that come to mind. So we could go on and on. Yes. فَأَنْتَ حَسَبِي إِنْ لَمْ تَرْزُقْنِي وَلَدًا. And you are my reckoning, we could say. You are my reckoning. You are my sufficiency. You are my guardianship. In lam tarzukni, if you do not provide me waladan, a son or a child. Yes, because why? Because you are the best of what is thing. If you do not provide me with a son, you are the hasabi, my guardian. فَإِنِّي surely I know أَنَّكَ that you la tudi'u, that you will not lose by making dinaka, your religion, vain. You will not. I know you won't lose. I know you will not lose your religion. You will not lose it by making it something vain. As Allah said, like we're doing this for nothing. Even if you do not provide me a son, I know, because you are khayru warithin. I know that you will not lose your religion. وَأَنَّهُ, now, we're talking fard and we're talking warith. Keep that in mind without me saying it. As students, I'm talking to students now. Some of you come and listen, you feel good, and you wait for next week. I'm talking students. Because when we come to class, I may ask the students. وَأَنَّهُ, and that he, sayakumu, or that it, we can say that it, sayakumu bidhalika, and it will stand by that. It will be established by that. Because it's not something that you were just playing with, and it's not something that you're just doing in vain, that you have put for us to have just in vain, and it will be lost. No, because you are khayru warithin. And that it will soon stand or be established, or he, sayakumu, will establish by that, min ibadika, from your worship. We say who or it, the religion or even the one who comes and inherits, will stand by that from your worship, from worshiping you, and only you. Man takhtaruhu, whomever you choose him of it, for it, whoever you choose for it. So whether putting it in the context, whether Zechariah says whether you give me a son, provide me a son or not, still you are khayru warithin. It's the idea he's given. And whoever, and your religion is not going to be lost So whoever establishes it, by the fact that it will not be lost, of your worship, whom you have chosen for it, and Taladadihi, and you are pleased with him, and you have chosen him, and pleased with him, for the conveyance, tablighi, conveyance, making it plain, conveying it to others. I'm adding to this. I'm adding to the wording. I'm putting the word in a certain wording in a certain context. I'm actually putting the words in the context of Fard and Water. I hope you hear it. And this is something I do many times. If I'm reading, I'm putting it in the context of where I see it while I'm reading. The tablighi. You know the word tablighi. Tablighi, we have groups, they out of Pakistan originally, I guess, and they call themselves a tablighi. It's a tablighi movement. And they go and they preach about Al-Islam, the religion. And they preach it in a common way for people to grasp. Tabligh. It's from the same word balaga. Yes. Okay. This is Shawkani now. So we get ideas here from Shawkani. Now, the next source is Ibn Arabi. And I have said in the past, Ibn Arabi, he's the more of the philosopher, the religious philosopher, the Quranic philosopher in this sense. So he's going to be a little different than Shawkani. Shawkani may be a little different than Ibn Kathir. So these are tafsirs, we call them. These are tafsirs of the Quran, and each one of them have their own method in terms of their presentation, in terms of their thinking. This is Ibn Arabi. And I'm working on a comparison of the mind of Ibn Arabi and the mind of W.D. Muhammad. So when you're comparing the minds, I'm comparing them as Quranic philosophers. I am giving it the name, Quranic philosophers, and I'm comparing their thinking, contrasting. I would say contrasting the thinking, where their thinking may be similar, or their thinking may be different, but it's similar in the sense that they are both of the same type of mindset, I would say. And comparing their thoughts on the verses. So I've already started this work, and once I have produced enough, I think enough to be read, and then I will put it in a book form, inshallah. So let me show a little bit tonight. Maybe during the month of Ramadan, when I can go a little longer, I will do something on comparing the minds. And in this teaching setting, I like to teach. I'm the teacher. I'm not the preacher. I'm not the leader. I am the teacher. Yes. So I like to teach. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm doing what I like to do. I like to teach. You don't need to see me. You don't need to come here and get happy and jump around and get your battery charged. No, you come, you may learn something. I hope you learn something when you come, because I am teaching, especially the students. And I have to watch the students to make sure they are learning and they're progressing. So to get to this level, if you can read and understand what I'm giving you from the Arabic in this level, then you have grown and you're learning. Yes. I don't expect for you to do it, to be able to translate Ibn Arabi and show. But if you can just see what I'm saying from the Arabic and you keep doing it, pretty soon you'll be able to do it too. But as far as Shawkani, yes, you can do that now. as far as Ragib, you're doing that now. You're doing Ragib and Shawkani now. When you're reading philosophy, reading something from a philosophical point of view, it's difficult because it's thought-provoking. It's very, very, very thought-provoking and how they're putting words. So let's look at Ibn Arabi. So Ibn Arabi is saying, well, Zakaria, now this is a good example of Ibn Arabi. He says, Aruhu as-sadiju. What's as-sadiju? You know the word Aruhu. Aruhu. Aruhu is the spirit. We can say that's the spirit. Aruhu. As-sadiju is, we can say, the innocence. It's innocent or naive. The innocent or naive spirit. The spirit. And we're talking about, again, we had the presentation, we're talking about man in the internal sense. We're not talking about man in the external sense. We're talking about man. But we're talking about man from his spirituality, not physicality. So this Zechariah is not, he's not speaking of a man, a flesh and blood man, Zechariah. He's speaking of an innocent, the innocent spirit. The innocent spirit. The innocent spirituality of man. That's Zechariah. Now, so we can see those who have not even studied Imam W. Muhammad, because we have to study him, but those who have experienced him, which makes a difference, meaning you have heard, you sit for years, and you have heard the speeches and presentations from many have listened from 1975 until 2008, and you copy and paste them, you listen to recordings, so you still have this. You may not be studying it at the depth of that I'm presenting now, but I can say that you can see the similarity right away between Ibn Arabi and Imam W. Muhammad. And for those who have been introduced or have witnessed Imam W. Muhammad, then I don't have to go through so much to give you the idea that Zechariah, we're not talking about a flesh and blood man. Because you learn that from Imam W. Muhammad. That these characters are personifications of principles and ideas in man. They are not people, like we say, physical people themselves. Now, you all can argue this if you want. Some minds can't handle it. If you can't handle it, you can't handle it. If you don't accept it, you don't accept it. Yes. So here is a similar mind in Ibn Arabi that we have of Imam W. Muhammad. Now, maybe Imam W. Muhammad then said innocent spirit. Maybe he did. We have to go and study Imam W. Muhammad now. Go back and study. And what I'm doing, I'm studying him with other sources. Not just creating the idea that I read only W. Muhammad and nothing else, except what he says and nothing else. No, we're talking about scholarship now. We're talking about reading other sources on the same subject that he's speaking on and looking at other sources. Yes. So Aruhu Asadiju, he's saying it's the innocent spirit and about al-ulumi, about the sciences. The sciences. So this is Zechariah. The innocent spirit, and it's about the sciences. Now, let me give you a quick hint now. So, Fard and Wadis, and the innocent spirit about the sciences. See, I could talk on this for the next half hour, but I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to give the hint. So, I want to give the hint quickly. The sciences. Now I'm going to make a statement from this without adding to convince you. I'm not here to convince you of anything. That the Qur'an itself, should be seen and taught as science. It itself is a science. And it's a science that's applicable not just to physical science, it's a science that's applicable also to the spiritual science, the spirituality of man. You'll find both. Yes. Now, we find in Prophet Muhammad, we find the historical picture of him holding the Qur'an. Do not leave me. He's holding the Qur'an. That's the picture. And in the picture, he's holding the Qur'an and looking at the Qur'an. So the Qur'an becomes the objective in the picture. He's not looking at you. He's not looking out at me. So I'm not the objective in the picture. The Qur'an is the objective because that's what he's looking at. Yes. This Qur'an, and he's concerned, Zechariah, he's the innocent spirit who's concerned about the sciences. Now, we will start there, and now let's go to waters. We're talking about inheritance and all, keep it all in mind, in the context. We have the Qur'an again. It's on the flag. It starts with Prophet Muhammad, and it moves all the way to what it is Muhammad. It's on the flag. So my first idea of the sciences would be the Qur'an, seeing the Qur'an as a science, not as a ritual book, not as a historical reference book, so forth and so on, but a science, especially in the sense that we're going to be talking the spiritual sciences. Yes. Enough of that. So when he called his Lord, he cried out, you see, and he cried out to his Lord. Fi istidai in a request of prayer, we could say, seeking in the request of prayer, al-kamali, the perfection, bilisani al-istidadi, by the tongue of preparedness, being prepared. Now, I can see what comes to mind on this is a lot, which I'm not going to say because my time would be, I'm trying to keep the time. The tongue of seeking perfection. Not perfection in the physical sense, which we will see. No, perfection in the spiritual sense. And being prepared for it. There has to be a preparation. And the preparation, we go back connecting with the sciences. I'm just connecting now. Maybe he's not saying, I'm saying it. What is Stahaba? Yahya. And he requested Yahya. This is Yahya. Yahya al-Qanabi. Yahya here, it looks like, for the students, it looks like a verb. It's not a verb, it's a noun. And we know a person's name is Yahya. Yahya. So it's the noun Yahya, and it's the Yahya of the heart. And Yahya is the long life. His request is the long life of the heart. Now, remember, we're connecting this with bones. The bones are getting weak. I didn't elaborate on it. I can't elaborate too much here. I'm just going to say things to get your mind going. So this is the Yahya of the heart. The Yahya of the heart. And we're talking about the sciences. the long life of the heart. Li Tantarisha, in order that it regenerates, brings new life. A sense of reformation. In order that the sciences reinvigorates, if that's the word, in it. Reform. The sciences are reformed in it, in the heart. Given the heart the life of the heart that brings about the life of the sciences, we could say. And, as we're saying, the sciences from Qur'an. Yes. That will eventually manifest itself in the material world. وَشَكَى انفراده عن معادة القلب. And his loneliness, his being alone, infirad, is complaining about the assistance of the heart. And fi kubuli, in the acceptance of the knowledge, in receiving the knowledge, we could say. Now let's go back again. We connect this with bones. The complaint. He's complaining. If you go back to bones, he's complaining about his bones. Yes. He's seeking the inheritance then. Complaining about the bones, and we put the two together. Just another hint for you. وَهِيَازَتِي مِيرَاثِهِ, and the possession or the right of possession, hiyazati mirathi, the right of possession of its inheritance. Yes. I hope you're following this. The inheritance of the knowledge, we would say, or the sciences that's in the heart, yes, that feeds the intellect, that validates the intellect, its inheritance. Ma ilmihi, with its knowledge. The inheritance with its knowledge. بأن الفناء, see, he's still talking about what's up here. This is the request. Because al-fina'i, or by that al-fina'a, the fina'a filahi. We talked about the fana. The fana is better, he's saying. The fana meaning that when everything else perishes, Allah remains. The fana in Allah, this idea in Allah, is better than khayru min al-kamali al-amali. It's better than amali is the practical, we could say the practical perfectiveness. I'm going to say it that way. It's better than that. This idea here, this knowledge, the inheritance that goes along with the knowledge in the heart, is better than the practical. I'll make a reference right quick. I hope you get it. I was listening to a khutbah once, and the Imam was saying, he said, you all keep coming to me and you're asking me this about the Qur'an and that about the Qur'an. He said, you all said, don't worry about that. Don't worry about what's in the Qur'an. And they said, just go to work and do your work and go home and relax. And just do that. Just be a good person. Don't worry about nothing else. Practical, just being practical. Just take the practical knowledge. Why are we getting into philosophical ideas? Just be practical and seek perfection in just being practical. The practical, not those things that are spiritual. Why do those things bother your mind? Don't bother your mind with that. I'm giving an example. Yes. But he's saying, الفلاح is خير من الكمال العملي. The inheritance that we get is speaking of the spiritual form. In terms of the spiritual sciences, we're talking fire and water. They are better than inheritance that we get from the practical works that have been manifested, or that which have been manifested from the practical works. Haythu, call up when he says, well, anti-hayru al-warithin. He's giving us a conceptual idea of this expression, well, anti-hayru al-warithin. Man al-qalbi, from the heart, wa ghayruhu, and other than it. We're talking about warithin from the heart. And what's in the heart is the sciences. Yes. And the inheritance of the sciences. Yes. Essentially, it's in the deen, not to be lost. I hope you follow. Then the next part, he added, that ends the verse. That's all it is about the verse. But the next part is very interesting because he says, وَهَبْنَا, and we granted, we gave as a gift, lahu Yahya. We gave him the long life. Now let's make a connection right quick. We're talking about Fard. We're talking about Waris. We're talking about the Qur'an. These are things I pointed out without elaborating too extensively, and the sciences, and the Qur'an as a science. Yes, not as something that we teach that's local. It's not local. We're not looking to see if Muhammad is an African or an Arab or the Arabs this or they're not an Arab. We're not looking at it like that. We're not looking at it in that sense. We're looking at it from a science. We're not looking at it in terms of school of thought. We're not reading Ibn Arabi as we're going to reject him because he's not from the school of thought that I am from. So I don't read that. I only read W. Muhammad because I'm from the school of thought of W. Muhammad. I don't read except nothing else. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the Qur'an in its universal sense. As a science universally. If it applies here, it applies everywhere else. And we granted him Yahya, long life. So let's look at it. So I hear people saying, and I'm not saying it's not true. I heard him say it too. Give me a long life. Yes. Give me a long life. Something to that nature. You know what I'm saying. We're talking about al-qalbi, the life of the heart, bi-islahi zawjihi, with the reconciliation of its mate, and nafsi, the soul, the self, the soul. So this heart is the mate of the nafs. We created you from one nafs, nafsan wahida, and from its mate. So look at Ibn Arabi. He's saying that this heart that will be the recipient of the sciences is going to be reconciled with the soul. Al-Aqidi, the barren soul. Yes. Because in the story, he's saying, my mate is barren. The mate is barren. Yes. So with the barren soul, It's going to be reconciled. Yes. And it will produce from this reconciliation. لِسُوءِ الْخَلَقِ, for the evil, the bad, the harms of khalaqi, the harms of the created character, I'm going to say. Or the harms of creation. وَالْغَلَبَةِ الظُّلْمَةِ التَّابِعِ, and from the dominance of the oppressive, the darkness, the oppressiveness, the ignorance, التَّابِعِ, of the nature that has been stamped. Yes. Alayha, upon the soul, as though that's the nature. This darkness. A permanent darkness. Dominated by darkness. You know, people who are dominated by darkness tend to be superstitious. Yes, they're superstitious. You live in the dark for a long time, you become superstitious. A lot of spooky stuff comes from people that live in darkness. Yes, you'll start talking about close the windows and not letting the jinn in. Yes, Dolomati etabi. You'll start talking about don't let the dog in the house so the angel won't come in. Yeah, you start putting these things in religion in a superstitious way because the soul has been dominated by darkness for so long. Yes, that's how you perceive religion. That's how you perceive the deen. With silly things, silly superstitions, not with the sciences. Yes. بِتَحْسِينِ أَخْلَاقِهَا, by improving upon, making excellence, causing excellence of its morality. Yes, because immorality comes along the soul. We're talking about the soul. The soul has become dark and immoral, superstitious and immoral, immorality. And some of us, our life is dominated by superstition and immorality. Dominated by it. Yes. Silliness. And we see it day in and day out. Silly conversations, acting silly. Yes. And being immoral. So immoral that if you even talk about morality, you may be deemed or ostracized as some nerd, some goody two shoes. We don't want to hear that. We don't want that. You can't be amongst us. You're too clean. We don't want clean people. We want people who don't have the sciences, but pretend to have the sciences. Pretend they're great scholars. Pretend these things. Let's pretend this with each other. Dominated by this. It's darkness. So what's going to remove that is the inheritance. Our true inheritance is going to remove this. وَإِزَالَةِ الظُّلُمَاتِ, and it's going to remove the darkness, the ignorance, and the mujibati. That's inevitable. It's inevitable for for the barrenness of the soul. It's barren. The soul becomes barren, and essentially barren and alone. Yes. Maybe we can connect this with Father Muhammad, not Father, Zechariah spoke for 3 days. He spoke in signs for 3 days. Maybe we take a look at that. Connected to this idea. Yes. But something to think about for 3 days. And Father Muhammad spoke in sign language for 3 years. So that's enough of that. Now, I hope you're following. I hope you're getting something from it. So this was Ibn Arabi. We'll take ideas here from Ibn Arabi now. Now I'm going to take a look at Imam W.D. Muhammad and see the thinking of, I just gave you the thinking of Ibn Arabi. Contrasting the thinking of Ibn Arabi without pulling out the contrast, without explaining, just so you can see. So you can just see the contrasting thought, the contrasting minds of Ibn Arabi and Imam W.D. Muhammad. And then you'll see the work that I'm working on. So Imam W.D. Muhammad says from the speech that has been transcribed, he says, but there is a story in the Qur'an. Now, when you're contrasting, don't be too literal to make contrast. When you're contrasting minds, don't be too literal. See it. You have to see it. But there's a story in the Qur'an of an orphan whose inheritance he has been cut off from. And it tells us that it is God's will. The story tells us that it's God's will that the orphan gets his inheritance. And if you understand that scripture, that all people that have lost their best life, they have lost their best life, and are now living a life that oppresses, zulma et or a life that makes their soul sad, deprives them of peace and pleasure and self in the soul, deprives them of Islam with its mate. You see, just showing the contrast. Self-fulfilling pleasure in your own self or pleasure in self. All such people are orphans by God's description. You're alone. An orphan is someone that's alone, that's by themselves. Do not leave me further. I hope you see it. I thank you for your time. Assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.